She was treated like an outsider, laughed at in a room where justice was supposed to matter. No one expected that she was the one holding the power to change everything.
Morning light streamed through the tall windows of the courthouse, spilling across the polished marble floors like liquid gold. The room carried a solemn stillness, broken only by the shuffle of papers and the faint creak of wooden benches. The scent of varnished oak and aged documents lingered in the air, a reminder of the countless stories of justice and injustice that had unfolded within these walls. The heavy doors opened quietly, and a woman stepped inside. She moved with a calm, steady grace, her modest yet elegant attire catching the soft rays of the sun. A neatly pressed blazer framed her shoulders, and in her hands she carried a slim folder of documents, hugged close to her chest, as if guarding something important. Her presence did not draw attention at first. To the hurried clerks and whispering lawyers, she looked like an ordinary visitor, perhaps a family member come to watch from the gallery. She slipped into a seat near the back, her posture composed, her gaze steady. In a room thick with quiet tension, she blended effortlessly into the scene. No one yet realized that the stillness in her eyes carried more weight than the morning light that filled the court. The trial was already in motion, its air charged with tension. Lawyers shuffled thick stacks of files, their voices sharp as they battled over technicalities and evidence. Every eye in the courtroom seemed fixed on the stage where reputations rose and crumbled with each spoken word. At the defense table sat a man known for his arrogance. His suit was sharp, his smile sharper, and his confidence filled the room like a stifling perfume. As he leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifted toward the gallery. There she was, the woman in the modest blazer, quiet and unmoving, a smirk curled across his lips. He leaned sideways to whisper to his colleague, his words dipped in disdain. "She's probably lost. Doesn't belong here." The two chuckled softly, their shoulders shaking at a private joke meant for cruel amusement. Moments later, he raised his voice, just enough for others to hear. "Ma'am, this courtroom is for professionals. Maybe you should wait outside." His tone was condescending, a performance designed to entertain. A ripple of laughter traveled through the benches, brief but cutting. Yet the woman did not flinch. Her calm gaze remained fixed on him, steady as stone, unmoved by mockery. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final. 10-minute recess, he declared, his voice echoing across the chamber. Chairs scraped against the floor as attorneys stretched and whispered to their clients. Papers rustled like restless leaves in the silence that followed. From the back row, the woman rose. Her steps were measured, each one deliberate against the polished floor. Without hesitation, she moved toward the front, her folder still pressed firmly against her side. The murmur of conversation faltered, curiosity stirring as her presence cut quietly through the bustle. Reaching the counsel's table, she placed the folder down with a soft thud. The bailiff glanced at her, then gave a subtle nod, one so small it might have gone unnoticed. Except that it did not. The arrogant lawyer froze mid-sentence, his smirk fading into a puzzled frown. His brow knit as he leaned forward. "What is she doing?" he muttered, his voice dripping with irritation. Around the courtroom, a few pairs of eyes met briefly, their glances heavy with unspoken recognition. Some shifted in their seats, as though anticipating a storm. The lawyer, however, sat rigid, unaware that the balance in the room had just begun to tilt. The gavel struck again, calling the court back to order. Conversations hushed, and the restless shuffle of feet gave way to silence. The judge cleared his throat, his voice steady yet carrying an unexpected weight. "Counsel, please step aside. This case has been reassigned." Confusion rippled through the chamber. The arrogant lawyer blinked rapidly, as though the words had been misheard. "Reassigned?" he whispered, his lips tightening. His confidence faltered, but before he could protest, the sound of measured footsteps echoed across the floor. The woman stepped forward. No longer a shadow in the gallery, she moved with quiet authority, her presence filling the space the way sunlight floods a darkened room. She placed her folder neatly upon the table, unlatched it, and raised her head. "Your Honor," she said clearly, her voice carrying a calm power, I will be representing the plaintiff in this matter." The words cracked through the silence. Gasps burst across the room, sharp and uncontrollable. Jurors shifted in their seats, spectators leaned forward, and the once smirking lawyer turned pale, his jaw slack. She was no mere observer. She was the lead attorney, appointed to the case after his misconduct had been quietly but firmly exposed. She stood tall at the counsel's table, her folder open before her like a weapon of truth. Her voice was calm, steady and precise, yet every word struck with the sharpness of a blade. Point by point, she dismantled the arguments the defense lawyer had so confidently paraded only moments before. "The evidence he presented is incomplete," she said, sliding a document across the table. The jurors leaned forward, eyes widening as they examined the damning proof. And this testimony he relied on, contradicted by his own client's statement. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his once sure smile fading into a strained grimace. He stammered, tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced him with a single raised hand. She pressed on, her tone unwavering. With each carefully chosen phrase, she unraveled months of his work, exposing every inconsistency, every hidden lie. The jury hung on her words, their pens scratching hurried notes. Even the judge, who had seen countless arguments in his years on the bench, watched her with a spark of admiration. Within minutes, the energy in the room transformed. The arrogant lawyer, once towering with pride, shrank before her brilliance. The courtroom belonged to her now. The hearing drew to a close, the echoes of her final arguments still hanging in the air like a lingering chord. The once confident lawyer slumped in his chair, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. His hands fidgeted with his papers, though he no longer dared to raise them. Each attempt to meet her eyes ended in defeat, his pride stripped bare before the very audience he had once entertained with mockery. She gathered her folder slowly, with the same composure she had carried since the moment she entered. No triumphant smile, no boastful words, only silence. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than any victory cry, the silence of dignity unshaken and justice firmly won. The spectators felt it too. The air was different now, charged not with arrogance but with respect. Even the judge's gaze followed her as she turned away, a subtle nod of acknowledgement hidden in his stern expression. The lawyer remained frozen, humiliated by the weight of his own prejudice. And as she walked out of the courtroom, her steps steady and unhurried, the story closed with a truth etched deep in every mind present. Never judge someone by appearance or assumption. True strength is quiet until the moment it needs to be heard, and when it speaks, it silences arrogance.